Oh, yeah. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the Paranormies present the Ahnenerbe Hour. I am Johnny Monoxide alongside Adam Haidt, Scott Taylor, Death. We have Musonius, Rufus, and Mr. Soul T. Seaman tonight on the premiere of the third season premiere. Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, thanks for having me back.
All right. What's up, Musonius?
Yo.
All right. What'd you guys think of the new theme song?
That was pretty cool, man. It reminded me of something out of the original Deus Ex.
Yeah, that was dope. Yeah, got to thank our good friend Mr. FEMA Camp band leader for setting us up with that. He's got another one. We're gonna probably close out the show with it later. Yeah. Shoot. How was everybody's break? Everybody good? What's going on?
I'm doing great. I got a pretty good job. I'm officially working class now.
Holy shit.
So I'm going to go buy some tap-out shirts pretty soon.
So is that an upgrade from being a NEET?
Yeah, but it's also an upgrade from what I was doing before.
Well, no, he had a job before. Adam's had several jobs. He just, he made pizzas. He did things. There was like shop type thing. Now he's got like a legit job where he could actually build up physical strength while working. I like it. I think, Adam, we're going to put you in the ring eventually, right? Is that what's going to happen?
No more skinny Adam eventually.
That's
I'll
right.
debut against, who would be a good Hulk Hogan. That'll be my first fight.
Really? You want to take on Hulk Hogan? I thought R.G. Miller would be like a lower class, but
just wait until he's like in a geriatric ward, and he's gonna beat him up.
Oh shit! Yeah, Death. What's up,
That'll
dude?
be
I hear you back.
paywall content.
Well, hey, implying that's not going to happen. All right, Death. What's up?
I do basically the same job Adam used to do, but at a different place.
Oh yeah, and then Scott.
There's that.
Hello.
Hey, how are you doing? Hey, are the levels coming in okay?
Yeah, everybody sounds good. Everybody sounds good so far.
Okay.
Musonius, you here with us, buddy?
Yeah, I'm right here, son.
There he is. And Mr. Soul T. Seaman, what's happening?
Yeah, man, you talk about a break, dude. I just did like a month at sea, and I'm going right back. Fuck.
I know. And they took your bunk knot away, right? Is that what's going on? You don't have your bunk knot anymore?
Oh no, that was temporary. I got back in my old berth now, and so me and her get to spend a lot of quality time together.
I was worried like that somebody else was fapping to your knot. Hey.
I know, right?
But yeah, everybody's doing good. Yeah, welcome back, guys. This is season 3. Didn't think we'd ever make it this far, did we? I mean, just a bunch of conspiratards, just a bunch of conspiratards sitting around talking about aliens and bugs and Bigfoot, fairies, and yeah. I don't know.
Real shit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know. Today's the let's say the 14th of September. Today is the 14th of September, and this is the week of the anniversary, the 16th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on the United States. Was it just me, or did it seem like it went by without too much fanfare at all?
Yeah, I don't think anyone noticed this year.
I didn't hear anything.
This was the first year I think it just completely flew under the radar.
Yeah.
Well, people are
in the past, so I mean, it really isn't. It doesn't have the impact it did.
And all the news media are focused on being hysterical and making up bullshit about our president. So
Right.
Well, it can't be used to further any of the political objectives of the current people in power. So they'd rather we just forget about it because it does, rile up a bunch of sentiment that they don't like.
Right. That's totally true. But what does get people's attention though is like the Holocaust.
No.
We can talk about the Holocaust all day long, but we can't talk about 9/11. 9/11 is not a big deal, but the Holocaust is huge.
Yeah, do calendars still put Pearl Harbor Day on? Because they used to all do that when I was a kid.
I think it still does. Some of them, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I have to
This is
look.
just turning into Pearl Harbor Day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Well,
but
you
people
know-
even, remembered Pearl Harbor more than, 9/11. It seems
Well,
like.
of course they did. You know why they did is because they didn't have, constant 24-hour 1080p bombardment of media. I'm going to say that it's
There's probably
easier
just
to.
so much information just being thrown out there that each individual piece is less important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. I agree with that 100%. I think that the more high tech the media gets, the faster they can make us forget about stuff. All right, so we're here. It's 9/11 week. It's Paranormies. All right, so everybody knows that the guys on the Daily Show kind of at most lie hopped 9/11, right? At most.
What does that mean?
I don't know
What the hell that word means.
Let it happen on purpose. The government knew about 9/11 and they let it happen on purpose. At best, that's what we got out of them. Well, you know what? And that's not what we are here at the Paranormies. Who's holding their microphone? Scott, are you on the couch?
What?
Are you on the couch again?
I had my microphone off, dude.
Oh shit. Okay.
I just turned it off.
Okay. Somebody was manhandling their mic and it was very loud.
Sorry.
Anyway,
It might have been me. I don't know.
it's all good. It's all good.
What's really good when somebody's making mic noise is to call them out and drag it out into a much bigger thing.
All right. I wasn't gonna do that, but now that you mention it, okay.
You can't edit the little bits out from the whole thing.
All right, fine. Okay, so here's the deal. Okay, we're not going to talk about planes. We're not going to talk about 19 Saudi, the hijackers. We're going to talk about things that we actually know happened. We know for a fact that Building 7 was in fact not hit by an airplane. Am I correct here?
That is a fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Building 7 was not hit by an airplane, and yet somehow Building 7 collapsed into its own footprint at 5:24, 5:27 in the afternoon.
7 hours after the
Yes.
initial strikes.
Yes. So this is going to be kind of a little bit of of the Paranormies take on 9/11.
7
So
hours.
it was well more than 7 hours, because the first plane hit at 8 something, and then the second plane hit at 10:02 or something like that. I don't remember the exact time. We're gonna have Spurgs in the comments. Just can tell me, but please do so because I don't know exactly. Okay, so another plane hit. 7 hours later, Building 7 came down in its own footprint. In not just in its own footprint, but after being telegraphed by news media that said that Building 7 was going to come down. So they knew this was going to happen. How does anybody have any idea how news media could have any idea who have known that this building was going to come down after watching, what happened with Towers 1 and 2? Anybody?
The official story is that there were prolonged fires in the building that eventually led to, structural weakness that allowed it to collapse. And
Which
then,
is
the fire
at first
Prolonged fires. I mean, the fires were burning for 7 hours, but
Right.
even that wouldn't indicate that the building would collapse, because up to that point, there has never been a steel constructed high-rise building that has collapsed solely from being on fire.
Right. Over 15 stories. Yeah. It's never
The
happened.
official story there is that emergency power generators automatically turned on when the building lost power, and a piece of debris or something had severed their main fuel feed. And so 12,000 gallons of diesel fuel that was stored lower in the building was pumped up like the 5th floor and burned for hours and hours until it sufficiently weakened the structure of the
Right.
building. Diesel fuel, I think, burns at a lower temperature than jet fuel. And diesel fuel is not really that combustible. It takes a lot of compression to get it to ignite.
Well, I remember as a kid, my grandfather would pour diesel fuel on like campfires that he was trying to get started, and he explained to me it's because it doesn't explode like gasoline does.
That's correct.
The other thing about diesel fuel is it doesn't burn at a hot enough temperature to structurally weaken steel, I don't believe.
It certainly burns cooler than, the jet fuel.
Yeah, kerosene.
Yeah, it's
Right,
it's
so this-
more along the lines of kerosene than jet fuel. Yeah.
No, kerosene is jet fuel.
Oh, kerosene is jet fuel. Excuse me. What?
Yeah.
Is it?
Fun
I
fact:
don't-
it's blue. It's a light blue color.
Huh.
Is it really jet fuel? I didn't know
And
that.
what do they call it? JP8 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, or grape
JP5.
juice. Yeah.
JP5. That's what they use in the Navy.
JP5,
Yeah,
that's it.
JP5. Yeah.
Yeah, that's jet fuel.
Interesting.
So
I
this-
did
this
not
building
know that that was
not
the same
hit
as
by any
kerosene.
airplanes
No.
and came down due to fire. And they say the fire started when the North Tower collapsed and damaged the outside of the building and set that diesel fuel on fire. Is that right, Salty?
Yeah, debris from the North Tower breached a fuel oil pipe in a room in the north side of the building, and that the pumps continued to run. The backup shutoff mechanism that should have sensed this overflow did not function properly, and 12,000 gallons of diesel fuel were pumped to the 5th floor where it
Yeah.
ignited.
And fair enough. Okay. If that is even the case, it still does not provide a reason for the building coming down, because no building has ever come down from fuel fires in the history of buildings ever.
Like steel construction, yeah, the way that it
Yeah.
was made.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're talking about
firefighters
still
even
constructed buildings.
The thing about Building 7 is number one, when it was completed was 1987, and it was at the time the pinnacle of safety and OSHA standards and fireproofing and everything. It was the pinnacle. It was a 47-story
State of the art. Yeah.
state of the art building. Okay, everything that it had in it was top of the line. Okay, buildings.
It had been completed in 1985. So
I
it was
thought
the
it was-
youngest of the World Trade Center buildings.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
not
87.
only that, but it was reinforced in 1989. They
with
specifically
more, yes, with more
reinforced-
fireproofing. Yes.
Yeah, the steel. Well, I don't know about the fireproofing specifically, but I know they reinforced the steel structure. So, of all buildings to burn down, this one makes the least amount of sense.
The building actually housed a emergency command center, a state-of-the-art emergency facility that the city of New York had invested a significant amount of money into.
That's right.
And for some reason, Giuliani did not utilize this facility on the day of the attack.
No, this was actually, it was the state of New York's emergency preparedness center or whatever. Yeah, it was. They did spend a lot of money on that, and it was completely ignored on 9/11.
To be fair, it's very, very close to ground zero. So
Fair enough, but that's where your emergency preparedness center is.
That is true.
you
They
know?
may have made the call not to put their command nexus in the middle of the disaster site, which
Sure,
I
sure.
bet this
Yeah,
felt like
they
a real
decided.
asshole then.
Yeah, they decided that all the millions of dollars they spent wasn't worth it. Right there.
but then maybe they shouldn't have put it at the site that had been already targeted in 1993.
Yeah, you would think.
It was
Yes,
a bunker.
by-
It had its own oxygen system and everything. It was for the mayor.
Mhm.
So it was supposedly hardened if it has its own oxygen system.
Now, to talk about the part of the building that got hit by debris, there were a couple of spots, weren't there? One was on like the corner, like the southwest corner, I think it was, and then there was another one on the southeast area as well. But it wasn't enough to collapse the building from being hit by debris.
No, none of the hits were. Well, I'm saying none of the hits from the explosions of towers 1 and 2 were enough to actually take the building out. But there is that testimony from what's the guy's name? The black guy that everybody's seen on the videos.
I know who you're talking about. The one that was in the building.
And had to crawl.
Yes, he had to crawl on his knees out of the building or whatever.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, I mean, whatever. As much as we want to make fun of his blackness, whatever you want. I mean, come on, guys. He actually was in the building when in his, if you watch the videos with this guy, he talks about the towers were still up, so it was still like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and he's talking about large explosions in Building 7. Mm-hmm. So let's start talking about the explosions in Building 7. So they started happening, and then there's the fire department guys video interviews where he's like, yeah, we heard just a boom, 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 and the other guy said, there was explosions, and then there was more and more and more explosions. This is at 8:30 in the morning. So this building didn't come down until 5 something. Right.
Well, you can also hear explosions. Several explosions were recorded on tape right before the building collapsed as well. Like there was one of a news reporter interviewing a woman, and you can hear it in the background. It's a series
they did the thing where they
7 more.
Yeah, where they muted all the high things, you can see if you line it up with the video, you can see where she turns her head where the explosions would start, and then you can hear boom, 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 boom.
They
in the
act
background.
very startled, like they hear explosions or something.
Mm-hmm. And then she's like, "Oh my God, okay, it's happening, let's get out of here."
Yeah, okay, so that's something else we should talk about. Is the reporter said it's happening before the building actually came down. These explosions didn't happen as the building was collapsing. The explosions happened about 12 seconds or something like that before it
12 to 20 seconds
down.
before it actually went down. That was, they knew it was going to come down because the news people had been they'd been warned that this was going to happen, because they knew it was going to happen because of the fires. The building would eventually collapse from fire.
There was.
That's their
and that's
theory.
not just a speculation thing. That was something that a lot of the news anchors, like Brian Williams from MSNBC, had said at 4 p.m. before the building had actually collapsed, is that they were thinking this building was going to collapse.
Right. Now, do you honestly think that
this was
Brian
something-
Williams thought that, or somebody fed that into his earpiece?
Well, somebody fed it to him, regardless of whether you want to say that in a conspiratorial way or not. I mean, they were told specifically, this building might come down. Another thing that kind of makes it seem a little fishy is that there was a police chief who is recorded being interviewed by one of the news anchors. And this was also before the building came down. And he said something to the effect of, yeah, it's either going to collapse or we're going to have to collapse it. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, he's like,
phrase,
it's either going to collapse or we're going to take it down.
Right. One thing that tends to get brought up a lot with this whole Building 7 thing is the phrase "pull it," which was it Giuliani that said that?
No, that was
that was
Silverstein.
Giuliani and Silverstein.
Yeah, I don't necessarily put a lot of faith into that, because it seems like something where it could have been him talking about pulling the firefighters out. So I'm
sympathetic to that kind of skepticism until we learn what Silverstein said, however many years later, whenever he gave that interview where he just
he basically said they collapsed it. Yeah, that's a very interesting interview. But my point is, even if you completely go by a skeptical version of the pull it thing, even if you treat that as they were pulling the firefighters out, there's still enough funny things that happened before 5:20 p.m. to kind of make you go, I mean, there's other stuff as well. Well, like everything I just said, like the fact that the firefighters were talking about collapsing the building, the fact that the news anchors knew about it.
They had a special like zone set up, like stay outside of this zone because this is the danger zone for the demolition. Or I guess I don't know if they said demolition, but they did have like a designated stay out of this area to be safe like line.
Right. Mm-hmm. I can almost understand that though, because you do have the two World Trade Center buildings collapsed and Building 7 was on fire. So I can kind of understand that even from, a normal skeptic perspective.
Okay.
But I think the explosions were probably one of the things that made me think that something happened specifically.
Well, the things that with are you talking about the explosions in World Trade Center 7?
Yes.
There's the videos, and you posted that 47-minute video challenge.
Yeah, there's a video on YouTube called the Building 7 47-minute challenge or something to that effect, and everyone who's listening should go check that out. It's really
you should check it out. Yeah, you should check it out. And if you can make it through all 47 minutes and still believe the official story on Building 7, then then you are
You win.
You win. Yeah, you win Zog. I don't know what you win, but
the prize is we beat your ass.
Yeah, with rocks and hammers.
Rocks, mostly rocks. Big brain nigga die with rock. Anyways, shit, I forgot what I was gonna say.
The thing I find really interesting about building a skyscraper.
You're cutting out there.
Yeah. So, what did you say? Try that again, dude.
Got a skyscraper falling into its own footprint, right? At almost free fall. Free fall. And then let's go back and look at, say, the Murrow building in Oklahoma City. Half of that building was blown off the front, and it didn't fall at all.
Right.
So that's just a weird contrast that sticks out to me.
The Murrow building had more structural damage, like per square inch than either of the Twin Towers.
Right. I mean, half of the Murrow building was basically blown apart. And if you're going to take the official story on Building 7, then it was weakened in one corner, which led to a, failure cascade, and the whole thing fell right into its own footprint.
Right.
Well, that's something that's odd about it as
time.
well. Yeah, exactly. At the same time, if the official story is true and the building collapsed from one specific corner being more damaged than the others, which is the story they go with, in a collapse, you would expect that part of the building to collapse first. But if you go and watch a video of the building collapsing, the whole thing goes down at once. Like as it's going down, you could hold a level onto the roof, and it would just stay level. It's something you see in controlled demolitions. It's not something you see in, a building falling on its own.
Right.
Building 7 fell almost at the speed of free fall.
Yeah, we should get into the free fall thing as well, because when you first hear about Building 7 collapsing in free fall, at least for me, it's kind of like, okay, well, it fell down, who cares? Of course it fell in free fall. For a building to fall in free fall, obviously that means there's nothing in the way.
Right.
So if you take like your phone and you just drop it on the ground, that's free fall, 32 feet a second squared or whatever.
When you're talking about a 47-story building that has structural steel all the way through it to hold up those 47 floors, free fall means a totally different thing.
Yeah, if it's in free fall, I can't talk tonight. There's no steel to slow it down. Now, if a building is to collapse on its own, and you can just go on YouTube and just watch buildings collapse, it won't go straight down unless it's a controlled demolition, because the steel buckles, it sways, and it kind of comes down, in piecemeal almost. That's not how Building 7 collapsed. I mean, it went straight down with nothing stopping it.
Wow, that's a hell of a coincidence that like the entire structure failed equally throughout the entire thing all at the same time.
Especially when the
Right.
official NIST story is that one corner of it collapsed.
Well, that was
we should
what I was
get into
gonna- I
NIST
was
as
just
well.
I was just gonna say that the NIST report speculated because they have no actual proof. It's only speculation that the building collapsed on in the one corner, which caused the entire building to come down. But that's not. There's no way that could even be possible, even based on NIST's own computer models.
Right. Well, NIST, to give an explanation for what that is, it's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And basically, it's a government agency under the Department of Commerce. And they are they do like measurements and, engineering kind of stuff. So they spent 8 years creating a report as to how Building 7 collapsed. Their annual
Took
budget.
their sweet time, didn't they?
Well, I just looked
it took
up.
a
Their annual
long
budget was
time.
almost $1 billion.
Yeah, I remember when the simulation came out, and it was like, holy shit, you guys still didn't have an answer for this?
Yeah, well, the other thing is when they did come out with the thing, is it stopped collapsing. Like, do you ever see the video where they show what where the dimpled ceiling, building, and it's like 1, 2, 3, and it stops, and it's literally like there's not a single frame past that.
Yeah, you can watch the building collapse side by side with the NIST simulation, and they don't cover anything beyond like the building dropping, like, I don't know, 30 feet maybe, and then it just cuts off. Now, they've had 8 years to do this. They have an annual budget of $950 million. You would think they could come up with something better than this.
That's
On top of that,
amazing.
the simulation, the inputs and outputs to this simulation and this computer program are classified. They said for the sake of public safety, they had to classify all of the data that went into the simulation. So not only do we not know why it doesn't match reality, we don't even know how they came up with it in the first place. Now,
we're not allowed to see it. We're not even allowed to see it.
I'm not a big brain scientist, motherfucker, but when you're doing science and you come forward with a thesis, so you've studied a problem and you say, here's my results, don't you usually also are expected to provide the input data so that someone else can check?
Yeah, it's called
part of something called the
the
scientific method.
We used to call that showing your work. When you did a math problem, show your work. Yeah.
I swear I didn't just go to the back of the book, teacher.
Here's the thing,
exactly.
like what gets me is like this is classic. Like this is not unusual in these kind of like lab settings, especially a government run lab. I have some experience in this type of thing. And what really blows me away is the fact that they didn't just like fudge the numbers until they got something that looked similar. Like that's what like that is the classic thing to do if you want to just like lie about something, because it's real easy, right? Especially because they can get away with classifying the input output. Like they could have made a simulation that was close to what was seen, right? Like for all we fucking know, like this is just an animation they made in Blender. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you can go on YouTube and like watch this NIST video, and then on the sidebar there's like videos in Blender of people making Building 7 collapse as well, and they look about the same, except the ones made in Blender actually are more accurate.
And the ones made in Blender, I was watching some earlier, these guys can't get it to fall into its own footprint. They almost always go over sideways.
Yeah.
Well, the NIST one also, like you just said in the chat, Salty, the NIST one also starts to collapse sideways, and that's when they cut it off.
Yep.
But the building doesn't collapse sideways in reality. It didn't collapse sideways. It went straight down.
It went down as if it's like as if somebody were holding a string on the right hand and the left hand and just like lowered it down.
Yeah.
All the way down. It went down straight down. It went straight down. And the only way that happens is through 100% controlled demolition.
There's another thing about the NIST video. If you notice, when it collapses, the roof of the building crumples in on itself. That's the only way they can get this thing to even remotely go straight down, is the idea that the interior core of the building collapsed first and it caused the roof to cave in on itself.
Right.
However, again, if you watch the actual video of the actual thing that happened, the roof doesn't collapse on itself. It maintains a perfect 90-degree square all the way down on all sides.
Just that one little piece
there was
goes
some
down.
internal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the penthouse. If you watch the whole video, like the penthouse goes in, and you know what the video shows is that a section of the internal supports of the building had been taken out before the whole thing comes down, which is what you have to do to get it to fall into its own footprint.
Right.
I mean, there's no way physically that it will fall in on itself unless some internal part of the structure had been compromised.
Well, that's that
Especially
first explosion, though. That's that first explosion.
Well, especially if this building collapsed due to the steel being weakened from the fire, which, again, mind you, is the official story. If that were the case, it would not go straight down because steel buckles and steel warps when it gets hot. You can go watch firefighters do controlled burns of high-rise type buildings, and that's what steel actually does under a fire. It will buckle and warp. Now, if the building were to collapse from the steel being buckled and warped, it wouldn't collapse straight down. It would go, again, sideways, because that's what happens when something warps. The steel doesn't break. It just bends enough, and then if it were to give, it would go sideways. It wouldn't go straight down.
Yeah, well, the internal supports had to be destroyed, in the very center of the building to get the building to collapse in on itself and not go sideways. And we know that's what happened because it did fall into its own footprint.
And there's only one way to do that,
happening.
though. I mean, Musonius, there's only one way to do that, and that's through 100% controlled professional demolition.
Yeah, that's what makes it look professional. That's what makes it seem very much like a controlled demolition.
The fact that this 47-story building didn't topple over onto its neighbors, across the street, next to it, or whatever, is kind of a smoking gun as to the fact that it was controlled demolition. I don't know. I mean, does anybody here think that Building 7 went down by natural causes?
No, I don't. And one of the big things for me as to why I don't is because of the reaction of NIST to this entire thing. The way let's get to
NIST in a second. But does anybody? Okay, so Scott, you said no. Musonius, what do you think? Do you think this was official story or bullshit?
No, I don't think it fell just to fire because, I mean, the fire was able to duplicate controlled demolition perfectly, and I don't see how that would happen. If you got damage on the outside of the building, you would figure that the failure would be there, not inside.
Right.
So,
what about
diesel was apparently... Yeah, the diesel fires were apparently...
that was one of the other things, as they said, is that the diesel fires from where are they, from the generator sources were what caused...
Yeah, the emergency generators, diesel's fuel storage.
Yeah. The emergency generator fuel storage is what caused that. Do you... okay, Salty, you understand that theory. Do you believe that's what brought the building down?
Well, it's... a question of duration of heat exposure. It can weaken the strength of steel, but
sure,
it certainly appears like a controlled demolition, not, one corner is weak and the building fell in that direction, right? It's like if you take one leg off of a chair and, it's going to fall that direction, right?
Yeah.
If you put weight on it, it's going to fall that direction. The whole thing doesn't all of a sudden lose structural integrity and go straight down.
Right. It doesn't lose structural integrity from the center, cause a dimpling like most buildings do when you do a controlled demolition and it falls into its own footprint. We all kind of know where I'm at with it. Death, Adam, what do you guys think?
I mean, the fact it didn't hit other buildings is like so extremely Jewish that I can't think of it as anything other than your echoes,
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, it had the Verizon building on one side and the U.S. Postal
that's right.
Office on the other.
And it didn't touch either of them.
It did a little bit of damage, as you would expect, but yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't do anything major. Like, like if this building had been struck and fell over because of like something that struck it, it would have fallen into something else.
What's funny is that 5 and 6, World Trade Center 5 and 6 are across the street, between it and the North Tower. The North Tower supposedly is what did the damage to the outside. I believe it did, but
didn't Building 6 go down?
Standing.
Didn't Building 6 go down though, like earlier in the morning? Like Building 6 was a small.
What was left of it.
Okay, that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah. 5 and 6 were turned into Swiss cheese, and then but they remained standing. I mean, that's the funny thing about it.
Right. These smaller buildings, Building 5 and 6 were like 15 or 18 stories or something like that between the two of them, each or something. Right. They were shorter. They were a lot shorter than the 47-story Building 7, and they took a lot of damage and were considered like structurally Swiss cheese. Yet they were still standing, where Building 7 collapsed perfectly into its own footprint.
Yeah, it's fishy, isn't it?
It's very fishy. Yeah.
So
what
Building
else?
7 is the only high-rise building in history that ever fell to fire, ever.
Yeah.
Because World Trade Centers 1 and 2, they were all also impacted by aircraft, right?
Right.
So
they were right. They were. Yes, that's where they get their.
Was physically damaged.
Yes, structure was physically damaged by airplanes, by two very large planes.
Oh, right. You asked me. Yeah, like even if I didn't know anything about the actual circumstances of the way that it collapsed and everything, just the fact that like Silverstein is like, yeah, we did it. It's like, okay, so obviously it was demoed.
Yeah, that's a very very strong. He said, yeah, we pulled it. We pulled it.
Way after the fact. Did he say? But I mean, when he said we pulled it in that interview, I think the context was, do we demolish the building? Essentially.
No, of course it was.
Because
That's
basically
what pulled,
he
that's
said,
what pulled means in a building demolition setting. The term "pulled" means to pull the pin to blow it.
Well, the reason I said that is because there were two different times that the phrase "pull it" was used. One was by Silverstein in that interview, and the other was heard over a radio. I want to say was it Giuliani?
Yeah, it was Giuliani.
On the day of 9/11. So I think those two things sometimes get conflated. I think Giuliani was probably referring to removing the firefighters, but
that's the common explanation for the term.
Yeah,
was that they meant pull people back.
But even if that's the case, Silverstein also said pull it in an interview after the fact, and the context was demolishing Building 7. So
which is not something you can just rig up in a couple hours.
That's the other thing, yeah. Is okay. So we have our friend Seventh Son from TRS who likes to say that so Building 7 wasn't whatever, but it was demolished by what was the exact term he used? Not entrepreneurial Jews, but like taking advantage of a situation. What's the
opportunistic?
Thank you. Opportunistic Jews did Building 7. So, the planes struck buildings 1 and 2, and all of a sudden, there was these opportunistic Jews that took they're like, oh, we'll just take out Building 7. Okay. Do you guys have any idea how long it takes to set up proper demolition for a 47-story building? Anybody?
And especially since it was on fire during that day.
Yeah. Let's just. I mean, no. Let's just. No. I know. Before we get on, let's answer the question. Let's. How long do you think it takes to do?
It takes a couple weeks.
Minimum, right?
I would think so. I don't have any educated opinion there, but
I mean, you're talking about a building that's not even on fire. Like if the building was on fire, do you think you could get it done more quickly or less quickly?
I think that it would be faster than a normal demolition because you're not following like OSHA standards or union laws or anything like that.
Okay,
I imagine that's probably a lot of the that it takes a few weeks.
Fair enough. However,
Now for
Demo
7
fire,
hours,
do you really
before.
think that in 5 hours you could rig a 47-story building that is already on fire to collapse into its own footprint perfectly? With no
miracle of
hitches. With no hitches. And I mean, like,
The question I
miracle
have
of miracles. Yeah, no Jewish,
Right.
Well, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would they demo the building? I mean, that's not even the official story.
Right. It's not even the official story. So why would they demo the building then? Okay. So like, why was Building 7 demolished? Does anybody know why Building 7 was demolished?
I have to assume partially, at least for the insurance money.
Yeah, well, the Larry Silverstein, he got the lease from the Port Authority in the spring of that year, and he was supposed to be at the restaurant at the top of, was it World Trade Center 2?
It was he used to eat breakfast every morning at the top of WTC2. Was it Windows to the World? I think is the name of the restaurant, and he ate there every morning at 8 o'clock from the entire time he owned the building, except on the morning of 9/11.
Yeah, because his wife got a skin doctor appointment and told him he had to go to it. That's the official story. And his contracts were that he gets to rebuild if, there's a catastrophe and the buildings are lost. So it was a pretty good deal for him. I mean, he made billions off of it, off of his initial investment. Yeah.
Is it not true that the World Trade Center complex was previously owned by the city of New York, or it was government owned, and it had only recently been privately or privatized?
I know that the Port Authority is supposed to control everything within so many thousands of feet of the Statue of Liberty. And the Port Authority was in control of the World Trade Center. I don't know how the leasing worked. I don't know if he was the first private leaser ever.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that exactly works, but the city wasn't exactly like the be all end all, like everything that happens in the building. So,
one thing real quick to get back to the whole thing about rigging up the building with explosives. Were the lower floors on fire during all of this? Do you know?
So
the fuel on fire was supposedly on the 5th floor on, I think, the northwest corner.
Okay. When you're demolishing a building, what floor do you usually set the demolition charges at? Does anyone know that?
Basement.
I imagine multiple.
Okay. So I have to imagine the whole fire thing probably then wouldn't have a lot of relevance on how fast they could set up the charges.
Yeah, but you rig them all the way through, don't you?
All the way through the whole building?
I don't know. I'm not a bomb guy, but I thought that they go through the center, the structural columns, drill holes in all the way up, and that's why you'll see the successive explosions as they work their way from the bottom to the top.
Okay,
Yeah,
it could be. I had
collapse like an accordion.
Gotcha. I didn't know how that worked. I was just
because otherwise you end up with the top section is still intact, and as it falls onto the now non-existent foundation, it's going to go sideways.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
By the way, I just
fire...
looked it up. Larry Silverstein leased the World Trade Center from the Port Authority 2 months before September 11th.
You know, the most hilariously Jewy thing about the whole deal was that he sued to collect double the insurance because said that it was 2 attacks instead of 1.
Yeah, and that's a fact.
Yeah,
no, that's actually a fact.
He
claimed $3.5 billion.
History, yes.
He got $7 billion because he claimed, it was 2 towers that went down, so I should just collect 2 times there, boys. Just pay me for the insurance thing there, and we won't have any problems.
Having the audacity to do something like that, like I couldn't. That wouldn't even cross my mind.
His lease only cost $3.2 billion.
Right.
That was the contract he signed. 3.2 billion over the next 99 years. So
Right, right.
must be planning to live a long time.
But yeah, his initial investment is only 15 mil.
Holy shit.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made $7 billion off a $15 million investment. It's one of the greatest paying off deals in the history of the world. Okay, so let's just go. Okay, so let's just say, for example, that nothing, conspiratorial happened on 9/11. Let's just look at it from the point of, where'd the money go? Where's the money? Who's
The money, Lebowski.
controlling? Yeah. You want a toe? I can get you a toe. Anyways, oh God. Thank you for laughing. The conspiracy theories with Building 7, they start with the whole, a large chunk of it was taken out. It's the only building that's ever been brought down by fire. It was, okay, what was housed in Building 7? Does anybody know?
That's where things get interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows what was
'cause it wasn't just
housed in
banks.
Building 7? It wasn't just banks. It wasn't because shit. Dropped my mouse.
Hello,
Okay, there-
Johnny,
I
did they
just-
get you?
They got my mouse. I threw my mouse
All right.
across the floor.
Let's not talk about
okay.
what was in Building 7.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about
those-
that. They're gonna shoot me. No, no. What was involved in Building 7? There were government agencies. There was all of the Enron information with California. You guys remember Governor Gray Davis and the rolling blackouts that were going on in California in the early 90s? Actually, the late 2000s.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So all of that was there. There was the
Oh, the Security and Exchange Commission.
Yeah,
yes,
the SEC.
the SEC,
The IRS Regional Council.
Yes.
The IRS, yes.
Well, let's go back to the SEC real quick. The Security Exchange Council had all of those bonds or bills or whatever they were from the Clintons from 10 years ago that were about to mature. They were all about to mature on 9/12/2001. So all of those things disappeared. What else was there? There was
Wouldn't those
also
bonds
from
be
the
on record somewhere, though?
that's where the records were.
How does it benefit them? To
I'm
have
saying,
physical
don't they have
bonds destroyed?
redundant? Yeah,
Well, they don't have to pay off people.
I don't.
It's
think
money they
would
don't have
still
to pay off.
pay
It's
people
money
off.
they don't have to pay off. I don't know. That's.
Oh, you're saying
I have-
bonds as in,
hold on.
like loans that the Clintons took, not like bonds that are maturing that they can then cash.
I have some
Yes.
government bonds in my desk. Are you saying that if those get eaten by my dog or something, I can't like go to the government?
No,
and get
I don't
copies
think
of
you
them?
can blame it on your dog. But if the government does it, they can do that.
But that's a different kind of bond than what we're talking about. You
Okay.
can take a bond as in a loan, or you can have a bond like what you're talking about there,
Yeah.
a government certificate that's redeemable for cash at a certain point.
Right.
Okay, so these are two different things. Then.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. So also in Building 7 were the was the CIA, like 2 floors of CIA stuff. There were
Allegedly, the Port Authority has never admitted to it, of course.
Well, why
Surprise.
would they? Oh God! You posted that thing, the list of the tenants of Building 7.
Yeah, the official list put out
Yeah,
by the
can you
Port
read that?
Authority.
Can you read that off, please?
Oh, yeah. Well, just give me a second. Talk about something else for a second. I'll find it.
Okay, that's what I was going to talk about. That's why I wanted you.
I
thought
got
you
it pulled
had it.
up.
Oh, you got it pulled up, Adam. Adam, go ahead and start reading it. Yeah.
Okay, so there's the Solomon Smith Barney, probably it's a financial institution, the IRS Regional Council, the U.S. Secret Service, the American Express Bank International, Standard Chartered Bank, Provident Financial Management, ITT Hartford Insurance Group, the First State Management Group, which is insurance, the Federal Home Loan Bank, NAIC Securities and Exchange Commission, and the New York City Office of Emergency Management. So that's the official.
Okay. So the New York City Office of Emergency Management is in World Trade Center 7, which is now about to come down at 5:40 in the afternoon on 9/11. Does that not sound like a little weird to people?
Mhm.
If like out of the context of all the other weirdness, I would just say that that's like divine irony. Because that's pretty damn funny if you think about it. Like, they didn't plan for their emergency headquarters getting destroyed. Oops.
a little bit. I want to laugh at that. A little bit, I want to be like, no.
I know it's treading a little bit off topic from Building 7, but the Securities and Exchange Commission thing reminded me, wasn't there a lot of really suspicious trading that happened shortly before September 11th?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
how you know that people had prior knowledge. Yeah,
There's
and that,
the
what
Securities
was suspicious-
Commission's. Oh, go ahead, Musonius.
No, I was just going to say that that's definitely real, and that's how we knew that people had prior knowledge. Now, people that like the official story will say, well, those are overseas Saudis that knew that this was going to happen or something. But it's like, but we have a right to know that. The U.S. government should certainly investigate that, and tell us who had prior knowledge of this event. That's their job.
Yeah, that's something odd, is that all these things have to be on record somewhere. Like if I sell a stock, that goes into some database somewhere, right? So why is it that we can't simply go back through the archives and see who was trading what in the days or weeks leading up to 9/11? If that
Weren't
seems
the
like
records at the World Trade Center?
Yeah.
well, I have to imagine they're stored in multiple places redundantly, but I don't know.
Well, a lot of case files were lost in World Trade Center 7, so you're dealing with an incomplete investigation. And
Yeah, this was 2001. I like considering the incompetence of like government and old industries, like generally, they probably did not have a sophisticated like electronic backup system. Now I'm just speculating, but that's a way that I would believe that they just lost it.
Well,
Yeah,
you would think they'd have a paper backup system in a different building somewhere.
Yeah, well, when it comes to irregular trading, you can still find out who it is if you want to investigate. Right? You can go and ask the traders themselves and then work your way up the chain. I find it very interesting that people had prior knowledge and were making irregular trades, before the event. And so, the American people should be interested in that. And frankly, the grand jury of New York should be investigating that.
Oh, definitely. And that's something that the grand jury hasn't even focused on at all. Like I don't even think they've done anything on this in years.
Well, there hasn't been a grand jury. I mean, the closest thing we got to any sort of investigation was the 9/11 Commission, which
the 9/11 Commission, which came out when was their final report in 2008?
Good question. I'm not actually sure.
Was it 2004 or
At least
2008? It's one of the two. It's like it's ridiculously long after everything happened that they released their quote unquote official report.
Yeah, and 28 pages were redacted because their softball discussion of the Saudis was just too hardball.
Right. Right.
So it wasn't until this year that the 28 pages, still redacted, came out. They've been blacked out.
Yes,
At least the Warren Commission report like had the decency to release like the next year.
Right. I think the 9/11 report, it took, 2004 was when it was supposed to all be put out, but then it took something else happened and it was like 2008, I believe, is when it actually totally came out. That's a long time. That's 7 years after, the after the attacks allegedly took place, whatever,
That's the real red pill, is their 9/11 never happened.
Right.
The buildings are still there.
Right? Oh, God.
Yeah, I understand them wanting to be thorough, but I don't know. I don't think it takes 7 years to put a report together.
Right. And then you have...
that gives a lot of time for a lot of heat to cool down,
Yeah, that's something else you have to consider about it is after a certain amount of time, you just can't follow certain leads anymore. I mean, people die off and
once things happen,
things change.
like exactly like leads die off, people disappear, whatever happens, you're not going to have the fresh tracks that you would need to conduct an actual investigation,
Well, I mean, I can tell you that the 9/11 report or the commission's report was, a way to cover everyone's asses. I mean, rather famously to me is, where was Cheney in the PEOC or was he not? When the Pentagon was hit.
That's the
Norm
Mineta.
The PEOC is?
The Norm Mineta files.
Yeah, Leon Mineta. Yeah.
Was it Leon or Norm?
Leon Panetta was.
Yeah.
Oh, Panetta.
Yeah,
But
it's
no,
Leon.
Norm Mineta is the guy who is the San Jose airport namesake.
What is the PEOC?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me look it up. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but you've confused me by saying Leon Panetta. That's not correct. We're talking about the Asian congressman.
Yeah, and
what was his name?
Norm Mineta, the guy
Ching and Chong?
Yeah, Norman. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Well,
Norm Mineta from California. He's the guy who they named the San Jose airport after.
Okay, so he was the U.S. Secretary of Transportation under George Bush.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
All right.
Leon Panetta was the head of the CIA, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay,
sure.
It was either CIA or Department of Defense.
I looked him up. He was DCI.
Okay.
Or do you want to talk about PEOC or do you want to?
Yeah, what is the PEOC? Let's get into that.
Do that.
Okay, well, it's the presidential bunker underneath the White House, and the Secret Service grabbed as soon as the towers were hit. The Secret Service did grab Cheney and take him physically, by his arms and legs. They just carried him down to the PEOC.
Put me down.
They let George Bush
Put me
read a
down.
book about a goat.
So, and there were witnesses there. What happened in the PEOC was there was an airman in charge of radar, and they watched both planes, come toward Washington D.C. And then, but the 9/11 Commission report said that Cheney did not get into the PEOC till after the Pentagon was already hit. And we know this is false from eyewitness testimony. So they actually moved the timetable like 30 minutes or 25 minutes, something like that, in order to get Cheney into the bunker later. And that was just to exonerate him for his decisions. He was in control down there in the PEOC, and he issued no shoot down orders. Right. So the Pentagon getting hit, you could blame Cheney for it. It's like, why didn't you shoot it down? Dumbass. But they want to take the decision out of his hands. Right. By saying that he wasn't even down there. Now that makes out the Secret Service like they're idiots, like they didn't do their job. They did not get the vice president down to the bunker. And they were also on top of the White House with Stinger missiles, watching, the planes come in on radar. And there was an airman that would read out how many miles or kilometers they were away.
Right.
That's
the whole
by second.
sir, they're out this far. Do the orders still stand? Do the orders still stand? That whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where that comes from. And of course, Cheney's like, of course they still stand. Did you hear anything different? Being an asshole. And then the Pentagon was hit.
What orders, though?
So basically,
orders?
all his fault that the Pentagon was
the no shoot down orders.
Yeah.
Right, because Washington D.C. is like one of the most controlled airspaces in the world.
Oh, it has to be.
And so the vice president issued orders not to shoot down aircraft that entered the airspace. Otherwise, it would automatically be shot down.
Right.
Yeah. Now, prior to the Bush administration, the air defense for local regions of the United States, it was coordinated by NORAD, but they were able to make independent, on-scene judgments, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point in the year before 9/11, the Bush administration changed that so that, it had to come from the top. If anything happened, you have to have, top level authorization. So on 9/11, NORAD and the, the ready standby air defense fighters were basically unable to act without.
Yeah, it turned out there were only 4 fighters, because of these damn drills that were going on that day. All the fighters were tied up in these hijacking drills, ironically enough. I mean, of all the days to choose, the terrorists just so happened to choose the day where we were doing hijacking drills, which would cause like maximum, confusion on that day. And the 4 fighters that were scrambled to protect the Northeast Corridor were sent out over the Atlantic by mistake, by a controller called Big Killer on the end of the Delmar Peninsula. And so there were actually, there's supposedly no planes to protect DC from these 2 airliners that are coming down on it, And so it's massive incompetence is the official story. Now, there's all sorts of theories that there, were still fighters, and they're covering up the fact that they shot down one of the planes, the 4th one over Pennsylvania. There's all sorts of theories, but the official story is these people should be fired. These people should be doing jail time, for being so incompetent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, D.C. and New York City are surrounded by military bases or Air Force bases within very close proximity, and yet, like, nothing was scrambled from Langley. They have fighters at LaGuardia. There's nothing there. Nothing was scrambled there.
Yep.
Eventually, the fighters that were deployed came.
It took them hours.
They came from Massachusetts. Yeah, they came from Massachusetts, and they did not go at their top speed. They didn't break. They didn't go Mach. They flew at like 500 miles per hour and got there too late.
Yeah, it was completely.
It was massively incompetent.
It was completely incompetent. Okay, so speaking of incompetence, we're not paying attention to this hour at all. So we're at the end. We're at the end of hour 1. Building 7 came down. We don't know why. There was fighter pilots. We don't know why they got scrambled late. We'll get into that in the second hour. You guys want to listen to some music, and then we'll come back?
Sounds cool.
All right. We'll do a little break, and then we'll come back with some 9/11. I don't want to call it truth, because every time you say 9/11 truth, you're associated with blue-pilled cat ladies who think that, Jews are just the elites.
Holograms.
Yeah.
The Jews that flew into the tower were actually holograms.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back. And we'll come back with the rest of episode 1, season 3.
Man, you hear this bullshit they be talking every day, man. It's like these motherfuckers is just like professional liars, you know what I'm saying? It's wild. Listen, Bin Laden didn't blow up the projects. It was you, nigga. Tell the truth, nigga. Bush knocked down the tower. Tell the truth, nigga. Bush knocked down.
Yeah, we're not doing that. This is Propane with Neocon.
The war on terror. No truth or lies. Awaken the masses. Open your eyes. Yeah. You're going to village as time marches on. Ambitious agenda that falls to your con. Run inside, so we fight and we pray that the kid or a right that we send off to die. Never step from the face to the self that we face every day, but we tend to deny that the cause is a just, so we must pray to God for the rest is his will, so we kill. Ran away, all the sheep with no mind to the road, so they do what they're told and they will. Thou shalt not fight for you. You have some prerogatives, except for itself. A country divided.
right, everybody, we're back, and we're here on the first episode of season 3, talking about 9/11. We're talking about Building 7. We're not talking about the Twin Towers. We're not talking about plane theories or any of that kind of stuff. That's that's either been done to death or we haven't done it yet. We'll get to it. But right now, I want to talk about where were you guys when 9/11 happened? Salty, where were you, dude?
Didn't they make a song about that?
Did they?
Oh yeah, when they were really
Where were
ramping up the
you
patriotism.
on 9/11? Let's
Bomb
invade
Iraq.
Iraq.
Yeah.
Was it?
What did you do? Yeah.
I don't remember the song.
Yeah, there was
it a popular song.
I don't remember.
South
who was
Park
it.
parodied it.
Right, where were
Weak
you when they built the
wasn't
Tower
it?
to Heaven? But no, it really is a song. Where were you on 9/11? And it's freaking all about now we gotta go. Now we gotta go invade Iraq. Yeah, so I was in high school and like the school year had just started, but because I'm on the West Coast, I was in bed, and my mom came running into the room, being like, that we're under attack. A plane just hit the World Trade Center. And I'm pretty sure I woke up and I saw the second plane hit the tower and, watched everything unfold and watched them come down live on TV. And I went to school. I went to school either that day or the next day. And, everyone's just like shocked.
Oh, it's like two misnomers. You said you saw it live, and you said you saw the. No, I'm kidding.
Why? Because it didn't happen or what?
Yeah, pretty much. Not the way that they put it on TV.
But I mean, like everything changed that day. Some of us here are not
for sure
old enough to have been conscious of kind of the pre 9/11 era, but it's not a joke when people of at my age and older can say that everything changed that day and it's never really been the same since.
When Mike and the guys talk about this was Zog Christmas, like they got everything that they ever wanted. They have a complete, like, try going anywhere on a plane. You're going to get your balls frisked, everything x-rayed. You got to take your shoes off. You got to take your belt off. You got to take your wallet out of your pants. You got to take your computer out of your backpack, put that in a separate thing. I mean, you're going to get inspected just to go from, Anaheim to Cleveland. They got every sort of military thing that they wanted out of this. We started bombing Iraq. We actually, after 9/11 was when we went into Afghanistan.
Yeah, we went into Afghanistan pretty quick. I remember in November of 2001, things were already happening because Afghanistan was like a stateless state already. Mm-hmm. The only time we'd ever heard about the Taliban was when they blew up those those like UNESCO statues, Buddha statues. That was when all I remember ever hearing about the Taliban. That happened a little bit before 9/11.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was
but all of a sudden we needed to invade Afghanistan.
Yeah, I was in school. I had just gotten out. I got out of boot camp about 8-10 weeks before 9/11. Actually, I got May. June. I was in school. I had gone through a school. I was going through my secondary school right when 9/11 happened. Okay, so it was in between. I'm trying to remember exactly which schools I was in. But I was in my military pipeline to go out to to the fleet and Navy, and I was on a training base when this happened, and I remember just everybody freaking out, like like something was going to happen in San Diego.
Was it like that scene in Starship Troopers? Hey Rico, we're going to war.
Yeah. No. There's no integrated showers. That would have been great.
Yeah, the bugs got us, Johnny.
Yeah, goddamn bugs whacked us, Johnny.
But the bugs. See, you laugh, but the bugs did get us, though. The bugs did get us. They just haven't physically cut us down yet. Don't you laugh, but it's not untrue. Damn it. You got me all off topic.
Well, I mean, I was joking, but I can imagine the environment of a military base would be.
Oh yeah, dude! Like the amount
pretty
of
fucking hyped up. Like you all
the
know
amount of
you're
ass
going to
puckering,
war.
like the ass puck, like you couldn't go across. There was an ATM across the street where people used to go, right? Like to go to this ATM across the street, you had to go out with like 3 forms of ID in your uniform. like they shut everything down. Nothing came on or off base without like, 2 or 3 forms of ID. Security went from you were able to like just walk off base and go wherever, you can go for a jog in town, or you can go, to the mall or wherever, but like after 9/11, it was literally like machine gun turrets everywhere.
And where was that, like near New York?
No, this is in San Diego.
Okay.
This is just every military base was like that. It didn't matter. Like it was like that was, 9/11 happened and boom, it was every sort of security drill, on steroids.
I remember in basic training, they told us that the last time that any U.S. military base was on the lowest alert level was September 10th, 2001. Yeah. Like it went up because there's 5 levels. You guys remember that, right?
Yep.
It went from, I think, blue to, now the second lowest one is green, and they don't do blue anymore ever.
No.
Yeah, we've got MARSEC levels. We've got 3, but even level 1 is like vigilant.
Yeah, right.
And it's a 9/11 era system.
Oh yeah. Security has gone up exponentially since 9/11.
Who was next?
Who was next?
Musonius or Scott? What about you guys?
Yeah,
I was in elementary school. I was in 5th grade.
Oh wow, you're way younger than I thought you were.
No. 5th grade. Okay, so in 5th grade, what did your teacher tell you? Because like your teacher was still like like be all end all, like control of the classroom. Right?
So basically, for us, I went to like a private school, and they didn't really tell us anything. Like they kind of refused to, I guess. So I didn't really actually find out what had really happened until my mom picked me up from school that day. But I remember basically all they told us in school was that there was an attack and everything was fine and we need to ask our parents about it. And
everything's fine.
Yeah.
Of course, ask your mom and dad, they'll handle it. They'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Of course, a bunch of elementary school kids, aren't going to be able to rationally say, okay, I'll wait till 3:30 when my parents pick me up. So some of the kids had kind of found out stuff from their parents who like worked in the school office and stuff. We all thought that a plane was going to crash into the school because we were dumb kids. So that's what we thought, was a plane was going to hit our 200-person rinky-dink school in the middle of nowhere.
They're going to come and get you.
Yeah. And then I remember that evening, after I got home, there were some jets that flew overhead my house, and they broke the sound barrier of my house and, rattled all the windows and stuff. And, of course, I thought that meant that the planes were going to crash into my house as well.
They really got it out for you.
What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
No, Mom, no.
I'm still on the run to this day. But yeah, no, I freaked out pretty bad. It was it's pretty scary for me.
Is that why you don't go to Thanksgiving anymore?
I go to Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
How they know where to find you, dummy?
Yeah, shit.
Yeah, they'll crash.
Right,
I can't
exactly.
give any more. Thanks, John.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, way to go.
Do you have a security checkpoint at Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter because the plane will just crash through it.
The Scoot family reunion, you got like metal detectors and shit.
We do.
All right. Musonius, where were you when 9/11 happened?
I was in college. I was like in my junior year or something. I gotten up to make some coffee, and I had a class later. But my roommate, who'd already been to class, came back and he said that planes had hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and I'm like, what? And then so I booked it over to a place where I knew there was a big screen TV, and then watched the towers come down on it. And then I went to work that evening, and it was absolutely surreal. It was a factory, and there were a bunch of guardsmen, and they were all talking about how we need to, find out whoever did this and kill them all. We need to glass Afghanistan,
Shit. Glass.
Probably not a bad idea.
Were you already out of the military by that point?
No, I hadn't been in the military yet. I didn't join the military till the 2003. So.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you were all ready and raring to go into Iraq to teach Saddam he shouldn't mess with America, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Kind
you
of
remember,
Zogcock hours. Who up?
yeah, it's like September 2001 is where the world changed, and then we had Amerithrax, and then in November we had the Northern Coalition in Afghanistan.
Oh, I remember those guys.
Yeah, and we had.
And then their leader got fucking whacked, and they fell apart.
Yep. What about Amerithrax? What's that about Amerithrax?
Amerithrax is the anthrax attacks. Like that's when everyone thought there was white powder everywhere, and
with the strain from Fort Detrick.
And there wasn't, even though it came from a military processing facility and whatever.
Well, yeah, the guy that committed suicide. I mean, they never confirmed it was him. His suicide was very convenient for investigators.
He had information that would lead to the arrest of Hillary Clinton.
Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird how every time it's convenient for a government person to die, they die? Isn't it weird?
Well, that attack did kill some people. I don't know if that old lady in Florida.
I'm not doubting that they don't do that, you know?
Yeah, well, no one knows how that old lady got it. You know, and it contaminated all these mail rooms. You know, if you want to talk about Amerithrax. But, you know, what Salty was saying during the break is kind of what I want to, talk about for a second, and that's how the world changed. You know, we're 9/11.
Oh, yeah,
because back in the 90s, we were talking about going back to being a small government, because the Soviet Union was defeated, and all that's out the window. Like you said, it was all Christmas.
Yeah. Well, Zog got everything they wanted to get. They got a police state. They got they got cameras on every corner. They got race mixing. They got this. They got that. They got this. They got everything they ever wanted. It's like, oh, boy, look what we got this year. I'm gonna open this one up, and it's look at this and look at it. It was Zog fucking Christmas, and they got everything they could have possibly wanted, and it's all because we believe the official story of 9/11.
Well, Musonius makes a good point there. The Republicans, with the election of George Bush, thought they were going to get to enact their, conservative small government policy because now we didn't have the Soviet Union. We didn't, need this massive military. And yet on 9/11, that all changed, and all of a sudden we went to a war footing and a massive expansion of the military and the domestic security state. I mean, it was common at the time for the liberals to whine about the Patriot Act, but they were right. You've got this basically open-ended, blank check to the government to get all up in your shit, and 9/11. It has been the justification for it, and it always will be from now on.
Yeah, and every part of the Patriot Act was written before 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, these things had no chance of passing, but after 9/11, anything was possible, right? They got everything they wanted.
Yeah,
well, like every piece of foreign policy that happened was predetermined. I mean, I think the website's gone now, but the Project for a New American Century, the PNAC, was a real think tank that had, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz were all founding members, and they outlaid their Project for a New American Century. They wanted American physical, empirical hegemony over the globe.
Yeah.
And then 9/11 gave them everything they wanted to enact that.
Yeah, all the PNAC reports were the ones where they talked about having a new Pearl Harbor. And that's what 9/11 is. That 9/11 became
the new Pearl Harbor. How convenient that happened.
Yeah, and that came through all those PNAC reports.
Yeah, Middle East policy for the next 10 years was
exactly
Project for a New American Century. Yeah,
exactly, and look at exactly what happened. Yeah, it was all written pre 9/11. 9/11 happened. They were able to implement everything they wanted to implement. From the Patriot Act to all the stuff that happens at airports, and
what's most frustrating about the New American Century stuff is we didn't even do a good job at the imperialism thing.
No, it doesn't actually work for us.
Yeah,
No.
it would have been one thing if we went to Iraq and like took their oil and shit. Like, you know,
Trump said as much multiple times, right, in the campaign, which I always thought was great. He's like, we didn't even get the oil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then we can't even do imperialism, right? So it's like, what's the fucking point?
And one thing even today that ties back to this is that like the invasion of Libya and getting Gaddafi out, that was part of the PNAC plan, and that happened under the Obama administration a decade later. And same thing with Syria. Like, these were all states surrounding Israel that Israel didn't like. And, you know, a decade after 9/11, they're still pursuing this policy that 9/11 gave them the ability to do.
Well, right. I mean, like, you know, they started off with getting rid of Saddam, who kept all of the tribes, you know, in the area under control, right? It's like when you have like 5 different kids, right? You have 5 kids, right? This kid, you know, he responds really well to taking away his Wii. This one, you got to like, you know, smack him in the back of the head. This one, you got to take away his whatever. You know, it's like every kid has a little bit different style of discipline. Well, sometimes you just got to cut a motherfucker's hands off, you know, and Saddam understood that. You know what I mean? He kept the tribes in that area in check, and once we took him out, that's what like destabilized that entire region, and that was totally planned by these people, the PNAC people. These people, you know, these fucking Jews. Okay, let's just say who they really are. They're fucking Jews. In the PNAC.
I don't know why he did the Alex Jones voice, because he's certainly not going to say Jews.
Did I say Jews in an Alex Jones voice? Did I say it in an Alex Jones voice?
You said
I'm sorry.
These people, implying. I don't think.
All right.
It was more than
I meant to say these people. Okay, is that better? Is that better? All right.
I guess
Saddam was actually an ally. I mean,
Saddam was actually Saddam was one of our allies. We actually set him up and propped him up to be the leader that he was, and then we took him out. What?
Well, it shows how duplicitous our foreign policy is. I mean, like you guys were saying that, you know, from a nationalist perspective, you know, the whole project in the Middle East has been a colossal failure, you know, because we didn't actually get cheap energy out of it, you know, but from a globalist perspective, you know, Iraq was defying OPEC. It said it was going to sell in non-dollars, you know, and in other currencies, which that's forbidden by OPEC. You can only use American dollars to buy petroleum.
Yeah, both Iraq and Libya were going to have their own, you know, attempts to subvert the petrodollar.
Right, and the Iraq oil, petroleum is sold to China mostly, right? So we're talking about controlling world prices, OPEC, world markets. We're talking about globalist institutions. It was a success. It just wasn't a success for the United States as a nation. You know, but, you know, for the people that control it, the globalists, it was a resounding success. Gaddafi actually gave up on terrorism after
he did.
9/11.
I remember during the Bush administration, Gaddafi, it was touted as a big foreign policy success that he renounced any sort of nuclear or chemical weapons and kind of went quiet.
Yeah, he basically was like,
still
okay.
wasn't enough to get him, you know, keep him from getting murdered by having a
Well,
knife
then he started, you know, I think it was towards the end of the Bush or beginning of Obama, he started talking about creating like a pan-Arab currency backed in gold or something, and so he had to go.
Oh, whoa. Hang on a second, Goyam. What are you trying to say? You want to back something with gold? No, I don't think we're going to do that.
See, what did he get for being nice? You
he
know,
got shut down. He got murdered. He got murdered and shut down.
Who are the countries that we haven't invaded? Oh, the two that probably have, or one probably has nukes and the other one already does. So, I mean, what's the message there?
Saudi Arabia and Israel?
No. Well, okay, good point. But, you know, out of the axis of evil, right? George Bush went up there in State of the Union and talked about the axis of evil. Well, North Korea has the bomb and we're not invading them, and Iran probably has the bomb and we haven't invaded them either.
Oh, okay. Yeah, George Bush.
I was confused because I thought you were referring to the country that supplied 75% of the hijackers on 9/11.
Oh, no, they're just our, you know, biggest
our second greatest
foreign
ally.
policy.
Hold on. So who?
Yeah,
hold on. Who is supplied 75%?
Well, that would be Saudi Arabia, John. They happen to have most of the hijackers come from.
Right. Why would they do that? Why would they supply the?
Well, because
why would
they're our
Saudi
second
Arabia.
greatest ally.
Right. Why
Yeah,
would
with
Saudi
9/11
Arabia? Why? No, honest to God, why would think about this? Why would Saudi Arabia supply 75% of the hijackers to blow up the World Trade Center in the United States? Why would at what point does that work out for the Saudis?
Because they're allied with Israel, and what's good for Israel is also good for Saudi Arabia.
But aren't we allied with Israel? Aren't we allied with Saudi Arabia?
It's a triangle. Yeah.
And if you want to get into the real axis of evil, you can say the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. But
Well, of course, that's what I would say.
personal opinion.
It's the three Jewish states. The fourth, if you count
Saudi
London.
Arabia's Wahhabis, like our ISIS allies.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia literally is the birthplace and encourages, funds the development of the ideology that supposedly perpetrated 9/11 and
Yes.
ISIS.
Yeah.
I mean, it's our policy towards Saudi Arabia is so schizophrenic. It doesn't make hardly any sense. Especially, there's this misconception that the United States imports oil from the Middle East. We absolutely do not. We've become almost energy independent in North America. It's just to maintain a global market stability of petroleum that we send our military over there.
Okay, so
does this also have to do with keeping the U.S. dollar propped up as well? Because
Right, it's the whole petrodollar theory, and I'm not a big brain nigga, and I ignore economics, but the general gist of it is that the United States sends its military forces overseas to stabilize the Middle East, or destabilize it as the people pulling the strings wish in order to manipulate the international petroleum markets to keep them exchanged in dollars and something like that.
Yeah, our dollar would be worthless if you couldn't buy OPEC oil with it, because we do not make goods for world markets anymore as a country. Not really.
No, we don't.
We sell food, but we don't really manufacture anything. And so petroleum and most dollars are held by foreigners, right? And why do they hold those dollars? The only reason is to purchase petroleum. So without the OPEC, our dollar is worth almost nothing.
Damn. I didn't know the specifics of that. No, that's a
well, and it's
a big red pill.
This is tangential, but it's a total double-edged sword, because when the OPEC nations like Saudi Arabia start feeling the squeeze of cheap oil, they increase their production to glut the market and put American oil out of business. This happened in the end of 2014 or beginning of 2015 when the oil collapsed. That was the Saudis and striking back against the glut on the market that was created by cheap American oil, which we all who are old enough remember that oil got we invaded Iraq. Oil got expensive as fuck. I mean,
Dude, it was
gasoline
like $3.80 a gallon. It was insane.
Yeah.
I paid
remember those
$5 a
days.
gallon. I was paying $5 a gallon. Okay,
I was too. In California, it was in California, Southern
Yeah.
California was $5.25. I remember that.
Yeah, the West Coast is on like a different petroleum, refinery circuit. Our gas is more expensive and we have higher taxes. We were paying out the ass, and yet we had just invaded an oil country.
Yeah,
right.
we-
And so
we
with
just
this,
invaded
the
an
higher
oil-rich-
price led to.
We invaded Iraq, which should have dropped our prices, but no, it went up. It just kept going up and up and up and up.
Well, especially because they ostensibly weren't part of the global petroleum market, right? So it's not like we invaded Saudi Arabia and disrupted the market, but yet somehow the price of gas skyrocketed during the second half of the Bush administration. But that led to the development of American oil and gas. It was really great, actually. I mean, we do have a large amount of production now in this country that we didn't before, but it's only economically feasible at a certain point at which the Saudi Arabians, because they have the cheapest, most easily accessed oil in the world, can undercut the production of anyone else. And that's what happened. So yeah, we're
Right.
with our military forces, we are securing the Saudi Arabian oil production that they then use to attack, use economic warfare to attack our production domestically. It's fucked up.
Yeah, and when you look at things like ISIS, we are still, we love Wahhabis. They're our allies. We hate secular Western trained dictators for some reason. We love the crazy chop off your head torture everyone. Wahhabis.
Yeah, I mean, Baathism was essentially Arab, fascist nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, we've propped up Gaddafi, we propped up Saddam, we propped up the Shah. These are all cut your hands off kind of people.
Well, we betrayed, Saddam. We betrayed Gaddafi.
Yeah, weird, huh?
Trying to
weird.
remove Assad.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
You
weird,
notice that all the allies of Russia and Iran are bad guys. They're worse than Hitler.
Exactly.
And all the allies of cut off your hand Saudi Arabia are good, right? So ISIS are, we want to support them in the defeat of Assad. And Assad's won. Thank the Lord. The alt-right supports Assad, Russia and Iran, to a lesser degree. Well,
Right.
Iran is the main enemy of Saudi Arabia. So Israel has gotten a lot of what it wanted against, the enemy on its side, and it's Saudi Arabia's turn, and that's why Iran is last on the chopping block, in the Middle East. And Russia has been propping up Syria. Putin turned off an attack on Syria, and then under Obama, and then they tried to do it again, and they've been trying to use ISIS to take them out, and they lost, and it's been wonderful, and it's beautiful.
Well, Iran also, we used to talk about attacking Iran. You remember towards the end of the Bush administration, there was talk that, like, is he going to go for it? Is he going to throw a Hail Mary? And then if McCain had gotten in, I mean, we probably would have gone to war with Iran in some way. But that would be a much bigger undertaking than Iraq. And that's the real reason Iran is somewhat safe, is that, like, that would be a big fucking deal. That's not just an empty desert that we can just kill everything from the air. You know what I mean? Boots on the ground in Iran would be a huge war, like probably bigger than anything since World War II.
True.
And they're completely surrounded, and they're very militarized because of that. I mean, Pakistan is our quote unquote ally. They steal from us and our supply chains to Afghanistan, but we allow it. Afghanistan is occupied, Iraq. So we had them completely surrounded. Basically, and so they're very ready for the U.S. to try something. Anyway, they're a tough nut to crack now. But we've gotten off on geopolitics, which is interesting enough. But going back, to 9/11, I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? I mean, that's it's about. Well, I mean, let's go back to 9/11. What do you think the reason was Building 7 came down?
Who are you asking?
You, Johnny. Let's start with you.
Why do I think Building 7 came down? Well, Building 7 housed many CIA holding companies. Like you had all of the Enron information that was there. You had the Clintons, all the what was it with the bonds that matured on the 12th of September that happened to be in the building on 9/11 that the Clintons had like 10 years ago, like 10 years before that in 91. There was that. There was the there was security company. There's a lot of security companies that had ties to the government, that had offices there. There was the backups to the Pentagon where Donald Rumsfeld's, hey, we can't account for $2.3 trillion of taxpayer money disappeared. Well, the backup servers were in Building 7 that just happened to disappear. There's so many coincidental business things that happened on the 11th of September that it's too much. It's just too much for me to believe that it's just a coincidence. We don't believe in coincidences here on the Paranormies, and having that many coincidences at one place at one time at the same hour or whatever, it's just too much. It's too much.
It seems like a lot of the investigation power was housed in that building, and that really messed up any efforts to investigate trading irregularities or people that were already in trouble.
Building 6 was a smaller building that went down earlier in the day, and that had the I can't remember the name of the company, the name of the agency, but it was another agency that was supposed to be investigating these big businesses that happened to have huge insurance claims during 9/11. Building 6 was another one that a lot of people don't know happened. It that actually did happen. That actually did happen because it got crushed by debris. That building actually did get crushed, but
it got a nice, neat hole punched in the middle of it though, and it didn't collapse.
That happened at like 8:30 in the morning, right? That was like 8:30 in the morning.
I was just looking at the pictures of building 5 and 6. They had holes punched in the top of them, and it's pretty substantial, and yet it didn't collapse. Like, I'll show you guys the pictures. I mean, it's like
I know. No, building 5 and building 6, those would have been buildings that were involved in like the first explosions, right? When everything first blew out.
I think it was the collapse of the towers that threw debris onto them, because
like
they weren't very tall.
Morning? Okay, yeah. Because I thought that they had gotten there's the video of what's his name, the black dude that was the emergency coordinator or whatever for Building 7. You've seen those videos, right? That guy?
Yeah, the guy that was trapped in there that they got out. Are you talking about that?
They got out. Yeah. He talks about remembering things going on while buildings 1 and 2 were still up, and the lobby of Building 7 was blown out at 8:30 in the morning. So,
that time doesn't add up.
Yeah, that means that building was blown. Like there was a bomb or whatever that blew at 8:30 in the morning.
Well, there is theories that it looks like it could have been internal explosions, but these would be totally different than the kind of controlled demo that we saw, because these potentially would have been like bomb explosions where something erupted upwards and outwards.
Well, I'm sorry, Salty. I know that the main conspiracy theories that believe in controlled demolition, like on all these buildings, will say that instead of having a cascade of explosions right before the building comes down, what they're trying to do is hide these explosions by setting them off randomly, hours before the event, or
Yeah. And that's why in some of the videos, people try to isolate these events based on plumes of smoke at certain times prior to the collapse. I understand what you're talking about. What I'm saying is, if you look at this link that I put in the chat, there's 2 pictures, an aerial shot of 5 and 6. And now I'm not an explosives expert. I mean, Johnny, you literally are, right? But these look like eruptions upward and outward, as opposed to controlled specific
those are definitely
demolitions.
Upward and outward, like. Especially that bottom picture where you see the explosion on the left.
Yeah. That's weird. Yeah. That's prior. That's prior to the collapse of the tower. What causes this plume?
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can watch Building 7 go down, and notice that the right corner of the building goes down just as fast as the left corner of the building, which means that both sides of the building fell at the same speed. And there's 25 tons of supportive steel in between the right corner and the left corner, per floor, right? Okay, if you can watch that and watch that building go down and tell me that that's not some sort of controlled demolition, then maybe you can look at these explosions from buildings 5 and 6 and say it was just, some weird dust that blew out the bottom of the stairwells because the plane hit at the 90th floor, and it pressurized the building and blew all the dust out. You know what I mean? Like, the theories that I've been hearing from people who don't believe that 9/11 happened in a controlled demolition environment, that they believe that planes hit the buildings. Sure, planes hit the buildings. I'm not going to argue that. I'm not doing that. Okay, planes hit the buildings. No plane hit Building 5. No plane hit Building 6. No plane hit Building 7. Building 6 exploded.
Well, okay, Shill.
I'm going to Angry Frog. Bye.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a fucking long time.
Okay, whatever. whatever guy who never, whatever, yeah, bye. Whatever guy
Hold
who
on, I
never
gotta
gets
get my
paid.
Adderall and 45 Big Macs ready.
Okay, do it. Like, wow, you interrupt.
Nothing
Really, you
holograms,
interrupted
though.
like a legit like rant. Like I've had like very few lucid rants. Okay,
Legit.
yeah,
No, that's true.
you interrupt
ruined
the
it.
one that I had. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it wasn't you. It was Adam. And
No, it was me.
but,
I
like,
called
it-
you a shill for believing that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was you. Yeah. No, it's not holograms.
it was-
I don't believe it's
not
holograms. It's not fucking
That's
holograms.
retarded.
Like no, we're now we're the planes that hit the building. Were they full on passenger planes? We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Like yeah,
Yes.
like I don't necessarily believe that that's true either. I like there's the whole theory of every time the plane makes a U-turn in this all these flights all took a U-turn. The two flights crossed paths over that one Air Force base, whatever. All these planes,
Right, I believe every single time that they turn around, it's over one of these bases.
right? Yes, it's over one of these
Not
bases.
necessarily a base,
So,
but like somewhere where they can
yes,
land.
yes.
What's the implication there?
The implication is, and I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that I don't know that it's not true. Okay, that these planes landed and a drone type plane took its place in the air, or they shot it down and a drone. Yeah, I mean, look, there's the footage. There's hold on.
I know we
hold
didn't
on.
want to get into that.
Yeah, we didn't want to do that.
That
We didn't
is-
want to do that.
I'm sorry. I'm
But-
sorry.
no, we're not.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
retarded.
that's okay. That, I'm just saying.
Well, no. I mean, yeah, we could talk about that when we talk about the towers. I think that the main.
We're not talking about the
allegations
towers
are-
right now. We're not talking about the towers. We're talking about Building 7.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking about Building 7. And Building 7 was not hit by a plane. Building 7 was not hit. It was not hit by any sort of terrorist act. There was a shower of debris from one of the towers that hit it. And it supposedly was on fire for X amount of hours. And that's why the building came down. Now, NIST, the National Institution of Standards and Testing, I believe that's what it's called. NIST. Did I mispronounce?
Yeah, it's. I think it is. I just looked
Okay.
it up a minute ago.
They
Standards and technology.
Standards and Technology, excuse me. Okay. The National Institution of Standards and Technology said that Building 7 came down because of fire. And this is literally the first and only time in the history of the world that this has happened. And they even said the guy, what's his name? Sanjir Sunjar? Fuck is the guy's name?
Oh, it's
that Poo and Lou?
Poo and Lou.
Okay, yes.
His
Poo-
name.
Pretty sure that's
yes,
his name.
yes. Shit in street Poo and Lou guy, who's going to tell me, as an American, what happened to my building, which was an American building. Okay, thank you, Pajit. You're going to tell me how my building came down. No, and like everything about the NIST report is wrong. You like no building in the history of the world has ever succumbed to fire. No iron, built building the way that was built with girders and steel and whatever. It's never happened in the history of modern technology. It's never happened that a building came down due to fire.
It happened
Right.
3 times on one day.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
One Meridian Plaza in Philadelphia is 38 floor skyscraper, right? It burned for 18 hours. It had a fire on the 22nd floor. It burned for 18 hours, did not come down.
Well, this one started on the 12th floor, so like it's closer to the ground. So maybe that's what happened, right?
And a little known event in history was that it was either the late 30s or in the 40s, a heavy bomber like a B-17 or B-24 crashed into the Empire State Building.
Yeah. Actually,
Oh, yeah,
that's
wasn't it
not
loaded
an
full of
unknown
bombs?
thing? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they went off, but
No, but there was a bunch of fuel in there, wasn't there?
yeah.
And why didn't the bombs go off? I mean,
So a bunch
the
of
building
jet
didn't
fuel.
collapse.
A bunch of jet fuel did not melt steel beams. Weird.
I mean, it's just an interesting historical anecdote that this is one of the only other times in history where a large aircraft crashed into a skyscraper, and the damage was
Well,
rather minimal.
No, Saul, that's one of the things that people have said when discussing this whole thing. They bring up the Occam's razor of course Muslims hijacked planes, and well, okay, of course they did. When have they ever done it before? Does anybody have another instance besides 9/11?
Yeah,
Muslims?
they did it a bunch in the 70s.
Yeah, Muslims have hijacked planes a lot, but no one had ever used planes as a weapon, except for in a Tom Clancy novel.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, we're not talking about a Tom Clancy novel. I'm talking about real life. Has anybody ever done that?
that is significant in that the concepts kind of had permeated throughout the culture. Okay.
People might believe it was true because
it was a very popular series. It was like I think it was a Patriot Games or some series. It's really ridiculous, but somebody flies a 747 into the United States Congress while they're in session and kills everyone. And I remember reading that in the early 90s, and then when 9/11 happened, it was like, holy shit. This is out of a Tom Clancy book.
It's really happening. Okay. So that to me sounds even more contrived, though.
Right, like the meme had already existed and was kind of digested and accepted.
What sounds more contrived to you? I'm not sure.
What sounds more contrived to me that like this would actually happen, that like people would actually hijack planes and stuff, as opposed to like they had buildings wired to blow up, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, but the planes crashed into the building, so someone had to hijack them.
Sure they did.
No, they really did. But I'm saying, like, it's a really interesting coincidence that this very popular best-selling author had this as a major plot point in one of his most popular series, and it came real.
I'm gonna play skeptic for a second. I get what you're saying, but there's also a bunch of shit in Tom Clancy novels that hasn't happened.
Okay.
So
you're saying Jack Ryan didn't rise from the CIA to become president of the United States?
No, I'm saying like
word for word. This is exactly what happened. Yeah, but this is pretty much word for word, like a storyline out of it.
But not Jack Ryan.
Yeah.
The first George Bush.
Yeah.
I personally, if we want to get into real quick, if we discuss what we personally think happened at 9/11.
Yeah, go for it, Scott.
I think that the planes were hijacked by a bunch of Saudis who crashed them into the towers. But that doesn't also rule out the idea that someone left open the back door for them, and told them, hey, we're going to be doing a drill on that day. And it also doesn't rule out the fact that it's entirely possible the towers were wired for demolition. Like, none of those things are in conflict.
Wait a minute. Why would the towers be wired for demolition? Hold on. Why would the towers be wired for demolition?
Well, I think we went over that already. There's multiple. I don't know which one.
Dog Christmas.
Yeah, that's the.
Well, the thing is like I work construction. I've never been in a building where I've seen any sort of, pre-set demo. You know what I mean?
Well, what he's saying is that it was a conspiracy and a controlled demolition, but it's just easier to use real Arabs, right? Which they're a dime a dozen. And
it's not like it's hard to find a bunch of fucking Arabs that hate the United
States. So you're saying that you're saying that Arabs stole the planes and did all the crazy flying techniques. And
there weren't
on top
crazy flying techniques.
Oh yes,
there was.
But there was the Pentagon. We haven't talked about the Pentagon because
I'm leaving out the Pentagon for. We should. I'd be happy to do another episode about it, but
okay. Because the Pentagon, between the Pentagon and Building 7, you can completely deconstruct 9/11. That's my opinion.
Well, I think you can do it from Building 7 alone, which is why I wanted to kind of keep the focus narrow. But I don't think it's that hard to fly a plane into a building.
Out that has been the focus of what you would call the truth movement for the last, 8 years has been
Building
only
7.
Building 7 because it's
Yeah.
the most anomalous aspect. It doesn't have a cover story, whereas
Yeah,
every other portion of this does.
It is. If you read the NIST original like theory, like, you know, the NIST professor. First of all, here's the thing about NIST that pisses me off more than anything else. So we have 9/11, which is one of the most like tragic American tragedies in the United States history. Am I wrong? Anybody dispute that?
Yeah, it's the greatest attack on American soil
Okay.
since
Okay.
Pearl
And
Harbor.
we're gonna have a fucking Pajit tell us how it happened and be wrong. Like, be patently and categorically and just wrong. Like, have you ever seen the any of the computer like display versions of how the buildings fell? There's the one.
Yeah, we
that,
were just looking at them earlier. Didn't
well,
we talk about this in the first hour?
Well, no. Well, one of them actually, it stops. It goes like 10
We
frames
talked
and then
about
it stops.
this in the first hour, John. We talked about this.
I think we talked about it before we did the first hour. I don't think we did it in the first hour. I think it was
We
pre-first
definitely
hour.
talked about it in the first hour.
We did.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I'm 100% sure.
Yeah. So I mean, did you guys want to talk about the Pentagon at all?
Okay. You guys want to talk about the
That's gonna
Pentagon?
get its own episode.
We should
Oh,
do
okay.
that on another episode.
I think the Pentagon deserves its own episode. Let's talk about the idea of the truth movement having the well poisoned. I know we wanted to get.
Well, we could do that, but Scott
Yeah.
just said what he believes about 9/11. Why don't we do a quick
sorry.
round two?
Yeah. Everybody
Yeah,
else go
sorry, I
ahead.
didn't mean to.
So how about Musonius? Why don't you go?
Well, I mean, I believe that it's very easy, you know, if you have a bunch of Arabs that are pissed off at the United States, which we've had for decades, you know, and Saudi Arabia is very good at producing them. It's very easy to, you know, to manage a cell. I mean, it's what the CIA does all the time.
Mhm.
And, you know, they could believe that they're working for a Saudi prince or whatever, but, you know, you have a CIA agent, you know, and that way you have a small cabal within our government that knows that there's going to be drills that day. And because one of the mysteries of 9/11 is, why was it on 9/11? You know, because it's not a significant date, you know, when it comes to the Arab peace accords or something that happened.
No, but
in
you
the
recall
Middle
that
East.
people tried to hypothesize that it was significant because it's the American, you know, phone emergency code.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which is sort of silly, you know, how
It
is
is.
that
It's
enforceable?
stupid. It's very stupid. But
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
I
That's not even a
remember that
really
being
good conspiracy.
I remember that being a meme. I mean, you guys have
Oh,
to
really? Do you?
agree.
Yeah, but
I
that's
mean,
the point, is that it's so inexplicable. Well, if it just so happened to be the day that those drills were, then that's the day that they would choose, right? Because, you know, they could have chosen any day in, you know, August, September, October. They chose that day. And it just
there
so
were.
happened, yeah.
No, I should let you continue, but we could talk about the NORAD and everything that was going on.
Yeah, I think that would be a good when you're talking about all the airplanes in the air, you know, with the towers and the Pentagon and all that. But you know, that's my hypothesis, that there was a small cabal in the government that knew that that would be the day to do it, and they have a cell of radicalized Arabs, you know, in you know, Hamburg, and that they can get them to take the planes. Now, when we're talking about the buildings coming down, that doesn't mean the
Can I
planes-
pause you? Can I
Yeah.
pause you for a second, because you're a very knowledgeable man, and the Hamburg cell is almost like a phrase you hear. But can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean that's who did this. I mean the Arabs, you know, according to the official story. The
And
19
why are they called the Hamburg cell when they had been in the United States for like almost a year?
Well, because they existed before you know, that year. You know, they were in Germany and they were being watched. Right.
So they were on the radar of the intelligence community prior to their entrance to the United States. Is that correct?
Yes.
At least some of them. And then now I have heard that there was some.
Hold
sort
on,
of
at least some of them.
stop
Which?
order.
How many of them? How many of them were?
Well, there was like 19 or something originally, but not all of them were on the list.
Yeah, I mean,
As
there was
I
an
recall
Egyptian that was the leader, you know, but all the workers are Saudis, you know, all the henchmen.
And I don't have the talent for absolute memory of names and dates that Musonius does, but I seem to recall that the Bush administration early in their administration had put a stop order or something on the investigation or the deportation of some of these people because their visa overstay. Is that correct? Does anyone else remember this?
Yeah, they stopped. They stopped. I was gonna say the FBI stopped processing these guys, and they stopped chasing leads. I want to say as early as April of that year. So
yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll be more than glad to read up on the Hamburg cell and talk about it if we when we do the next episode. I'll go into the weeds for you.
No, but I mean, I bring this up, and that would be great. I bring this up because there's so much more to the 9/11, investigation than the events of the day itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's all these things that happened on the lead up that are so serendipitous and coincidental that just make your head spin.
Well, yeah,
I mean, the
there's
two
all
African
the
embassy bombings, and the coal.
I'm sorry, the what? The coal?
The USS Cole.
Oh,
Yeah,
the USS Cole. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I thought you meant like coal as in like coal, COAL. No.
What?
Okay, yeah.
Compressed carbon.
Yeah. Well,
No,
he
but,
said he said like
even-
the African embassy bombing. Something. What does that have to? No.
Even
But then there's all the other stuff that led up before that. The stuff that led up before 9/11. So we could make this into a few different.
It's such a huge topic.
Yeah,
we
it really is. It really is. Like we could talk about the buildings. We could talk about the actual demolition of the buildings or whatever, how that happened. We could talk about the ties of the Bush family to everything.
I did want to finish. I wanted to finish everyone's opinions on what happened. So Musonius is basically saying about what I agree, which is that let it happen on purpose, except also use your intelligence apparatus to manipulate a cover for what potentially was your own setup to make it way worse than the cover story says it is, right? So like you manipulate the Hamburg cell using your intelligence apparatus. The hijackers really did get on board these airplanes. The airplanes did crash into the towers and the Pentagon, as they say, but were they controlled by these men who failed basic flight school and were not qualified for single engine Cessnas? That is not proven. And so then if you know when all this is going to happen, you set all this up using your multinational intelligence apparatuses. That means not just the CIA, but the Mossad and factions within the Saudi government. Mm-hmm. And then you're free to set up whatever you need to do to make sure that this event has the maximum impact. All right. And let's not forget the World Trade Center was attacked in 1993. I mean, this was like already tried this once.
Well, but the thing about the 1993 attacks, is that they were literally done by somebody who was propped up by the FBI. The FBI gave the guy a bomb that wasn't supposed to be active, but they gave him like an active fucking weapon. This was
the Egyptian army officer who was working for us, who assembled the weapon, started recording his agent handler when the agent handler told him to use real explosives and make a real weapon.
Yeah, so
that's all recorded.
It's all recorded that the original 9/11 bombing was done basically by the FBI.
They already manipulated a person into doing it, so why can't they do it twice? And I mean, that's one thing for the people who scorn any skepticism of this is all you have to do is look at the history of our intelligence apparatuses. You look at say MK Ultra or COINTELPRO, or look up Operation Northwoods. I mean, that Operation Northwoods didn't happen, but they proposed that it would happen. All right. So this shit is not happening in a vacuum.
I would say that this is CIA, not FBI, especially when you have pilots and airplanes.
Right.
Because they've trained a lot of third world people to fly.
Hey, somebody had to fly that cocaine in.
Exactly. The Cocaine Importation Agency. Yep. All right, so we've broken into a good bit of 9/11 conspiratorial whatever that we're not allowed to talk about on TRS, but we're doing it. We're doing it. All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it some more.
We're gonna get
Can I say one thing that to placate probably some of the listeners right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that yes, Mossad was involved. The Israel was involved, absolutely, because
you
their
can't
foreign
say it
activities.
wasn't. Like, there's absolutely no way.
We've gone almost this entire episode without mentioning anything about Israel. We haven't talked about the dancing Israelis or the men who were, arrested and at the George Washington Bridge and all the urban moving systems. We're all aware of these things, listeners. Trust us, we are.
Yeah. Not going to do that, though. Not going to do that. There's so much to do with 9/11. Like, that's why this is going to be a multi-episode thing. All right?
No, we need to say it. Come on, because this to a lot of people, it's an emotional issue.
No, it really is. It really is. This is the New Yorkers. This is to New Yorkers. This is their Holocaust. I get it. You guys don't want to talk about it. It's fine. We're gonna
hold on now. The two New Yorkers, Sven and Mike, are the ones who are like, yeah, we don't really care what the fucking Arabs did it, But I mean, just Americans and our the TRS fandom here. We understand Mossad was involved, absolutely, but Mossad and the CIA on an international level, almost interchangeable, in my opinion.
100%. I agree with you 100% on that. The Mossad is, along with the CIA, probably 1 in 2, if not 1 in 1, scariest operations in the world. Now, like I would have said the KGB in the 80s, but now it's the CIA.
It's the FSB. I mean, the FSB is still respected.
I guess. No, but this was 100% Mossad, CIA, covert operations.
Yeah. I'm curious what Adam's take on is as well.
Yeah. I think Adam might have
regarding.
Oh no, Adam's still here.
9/11.
What's your 9/11 theory, man?
Broadly speaking, there's no doubt in my mind that planes hit the towers, and that just in terms of cost effectiveness, of course you're gonna get some fucking shitty Arabs, but I think a point I would like to make, just broadly speaking, is one of the common responses to skepticism is about motivations or whatever, is people want one big reason that it happened. But I don't think that is really, that's just kind of not the way that the world works. There's this this nexus of a whole bunch of things that would benefit a whole bunch of people to pull off. And we know from the past that the deep state doesn't have any issue whatsoever with taking American lives to accomplish what they want to do. And considering that there were investigations into billions and trillions of dollars missing from various government budgets, the IRS was investigating that, and lo and behold, this IRS office was in Building 7 when it came down.
Weird.
There's a shitload of people who benefited from what happened. And these are the kind of people who don't have a problem with, collateral damage being American lives. And so I don't know enough about the Twin Towers. It does seem a little weird that planes alone would have taken them, caused a total collapse. And Building 7 was very obviously a controlled demolition. There's no way
if they were going to do
can...
one building, if they were going to do one, wouldn't you expect they would do more?
Yeah, why the hell not? It's okay, we all let's assume that it's LIHOP plus a lot of people are going to benefit from this. It's well, fuck it. We got this other thing that we can, the Silverstein could make a shitload of money on insurance from Building 7 or whatever.
Right. But the thing is,
might as well, we're right there.
But the thing is doing it doing it takes so much time to get it done that there's no way it, like, you know, oh, the plane hit at 8 o'clock. Oh, we wired the building to go off at 5 in the afternoon. It doesn't happen like that. 30, 40 guys can't do that. You can't send a demo.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Adam,
Let it happen on purpose. We know it's going to happen. Let's get this shit ready to go for when we know it's going to happen.
See, that's bigger. What you and I are on this, and I think Musonius, we're all kind of saying a similar thing, is it's bigger than let it happen on purpose. It's there's a cover story there, you know, obviously I fully believe that plane, I think you just said it and Musonius said it, the planes hit the towers hijacked by Arabs. And it's debatable if they were actually under their flight control during the end maneuvers. But, you know, did the collapse happen because of those those plane impacts?
No.
Well, obviously in Building 7, they did not, because no plane hit it.
Right.
So you could go from there.
Right.
Yeah, all the theories about controlled demolition have months and months of people going on deserted floors and making a bunch of noise that other people heard. You know, they're making
know more about that, because I only know a little bit about that.
Yeah. So no one's saying that the demolition teams acted on that day. They acted months and months beforehand.
Right.
And, the whole, yeah.
I'll say there's records of contractors that don't exist and didn't exist prior to signing in to the building and existing, like, you know, after they signed out of the building. Like an Ace elevator was one, or it was either Ace or Acme elevator company.
Acme. Oh, that's
Acme.
funny.
Oh, the Wile E. Coyote did not.
No, it was either. It might have been. I think it was Ace, actually, because Acme is just, to me, that's even too much. But there was the
Roadrunner was going to be stopping there.
No, but there's these signs, like, you know, there was the Israeli art students on the 90-something floor.
That's the only thing I remember of, and this is, I didn't want to mention it by myself. Some unsourced, can't remember where I heard this. That there was a group of Israeli art students.
There's a group of Israeli art students that so somehow broke into the most secure building on the East Coast, the most secure building, like the Trades Commission was in the World Trade Center. This is the concentrated head of all finance, of all Jewry, is the World Trade Center. And somehow these art students managed to break in and have like some sort of, like, you know, they built a scaffold outside of the building and had like an art thing. And look at what we did. You know, no. I'm sorry. That doesn't happen. You're in the most financially, like, in not just financially, but secure building in New York. You know, that's not something that just happens. They just, you know, some art students just happen to bypass all the security, get up to the 93rd floor, to get onto an unoccupied floor, to somehow, you know, make some sort of art demonstration. I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I just don't believe that.
So, Johnny, what's your 9/11 summary?
My 9/11 summary is that there were the building was tasked to be brought down in 1989 when Silverstein started taking over the building. They knew that this would be a good building to do because the fire retardant had failed several inspections. You know, and it was going to cost them several $1 billion to upgrade it. So, fuck it, let's get rid of it. Do an insurance scam, make a bunch of money. That helps, you know. I really think that this had like the Mossad, like the Lehop. I think that there was more to it than Lehop. I think that I'm one of the you know, where you see the planes cross over the Air Force bases and whatever, and then somehow the plane disappears and then it comes back headed towards the towers, right? I don't know. I'm not 100%.
Or are you saying that there's?
I'm not 100% convinced. I'm not 100% convinced that they didn't forcibly land these planes, take them over, and use some sort of remote controlled have you seen the video of the one plane that crashes into? I'm not sure if it's one or two, but it seems to be one of these new refueling jets that were purchased from the military. They have certain things that are on the fuselage that passenger planes don't have. And if you look at the close-ups of the planes that are actually in the building, I believe there's planes. I just don't believe that they were passenger planes.
All right, fair enough. I mean, I know we didn't want to debate the finer points of that, but that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. There's a lot to this. Like this 9/11 truth and theory and whatever. You can go weeks and weeks and weeks with this and never, finish. You can never even come around to the same subject twice. All I know is that shit, we're well over 2 hours, and people thought that TRS wasn't going to talk about 9/11, but here we are.
I think we should still talk about what happened to the truth movement.
Yeah, you guys want to do that real quick? Let's do that. Can we do that in 5 minutes?
I'm willing to go for it.
All right.
Well, I mean, what do we want to start with? Like hologram airplanes?
You guys that are younger are going to have a different perspective.
Right.
Because we who were almost adults at the time, we lived through it, and then we saw everything unfold. And the truth movement really started to gain steam, I want to say around 2003 or 4. Because for 2 years or so, it was like the nation just solidified behind the government line. And even the liberals there was no real anti-war. I mean, like the Iraq war, there was some opposition, but it was like if you questioned it on the media, like Fox News was a juggernaut. It was like, why do you hate America? Fox, this is why they're still mad at Fox News, is because Fox News came on the scene with the boost of 9/11 and they just crushed everybody.
They bludgeoned everybody over the head with, what are you, not American?
You cut out pretty bad. I didn't hear you.
Oh, I cut out pretty bad?
Yeah, you did.
Shit.
But they bludgeoned everybody. They did.
Oh, they said they bludgeoned everybody over the head with, America,
And he cut out again. But no,
God damn it.
Fuck.
I said
Sean
Hannity.
Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly. Yeah, America. I mean, there was that that Tom Tomorrow, that fucking shitlib cartoon in like the alternative West Coast magazines. I'm sure Johnny had one down there in the Bay, and we have up here in Cascadia. But he was actually right with some of his cartoons where he'd have Sean Hannity, like, you question anything about what the government was doing. Why do you hate America? I mean, but they're still butthurt about how badly Fox News manipulated and controlled the entire country for like 2 years after 9/11.
Oh,
and
they did too.
They really did. And it wasn't until maybe 2005 that like Code Pink got really big. It was after George Bush's reelection, because they all really thought that, Kerry was going to win. But I remember the truth movement started to gain steam, and it was like, wait a minute, what really happened on 9/11? And people started to question. But like I have this one memory of, there's a grocery store. I was living in Seattle in a pretty busy like urban area. There's a grocery store, and they had a busy street corner, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of automotive traffic. And there was people set up literally like a booth of like 9/11 truth, but they had pictures of Bush as Hitler next to their like 9/11 truth banners,
Yeah, and
it was like, wrong. I don't want to go near you. You look crazy. And I was still young. I was like at 22 or whatever. I'm like, I don't really want to go talk to you, because that seems crazy to me. And then I started hearing about, like, there was that one woman who was all about like nukes were detonated in the towers, and lasers and holographic airplanes, and it just went off the fucking rails,
Yeah, and the surge, in the second term, there was 9/11 truth kept getting bigger and bigger. I think Obama's election probably did the most to hurt it.
Yeah.
Because, Democrats are only interested in, war. They're only against war when Republicans are doing it.
Right. And then when Obama's pushing war, they can't, they have to back it up. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I agree with that. As the war expanded, the truth movement expanded, but at the same time, expansion isn't positive, because all of these profit seekers, and so many books were written about it. And even Alex Jones, who's, he's a funny guy, and he has a lot of interesting. He goes after a lot of people in power. Maybe not everybody, but he does. But he went off. He went in the deep end too. I mean, he's just anybody who had anything to say globbed on to 9/11 truth and made it seem like a fucking laughing stock. And it's to this day, it's tarnished.
Yeah, it's because you've got the what's her name there? You got the Rosie O'Donnells and all the other like shit lib, blue pilled, quote unquote truthers that are all about Building 7 and whatever. It makes all the rest of us not look so great.
How much do you guys think that the quote unquote truth movement it has been funded or co-opted by some sort of like government agencies? Because I do believe that.
To a
I
point,
think there's no question
agree.
because
I agree to a point.
Because specifically, there's that fucking weird Sandy Hook Internet Defense Force that will find anybody.
Well, no, it's those same people. It's
anywhere
those same
talking
people.
about Sandy
It's those
Hook.
same people. And if you look, it's the same guys that are commenting on Sandy Hook, that are commenting on 9/11, that are commenting on whatever. It's the same group of people.
I bet if we talk about Sandy Hook for the next 10 minutes, we'll get them to comment on this video.
Yeah, but let's not talk. Let's not do that. Let's not do that.
No, that's fine.
Let's just say this. Let's just say
But,
this. That well, go ahead, Musonius. You first.
No, I was just going to say that on that point, it's like whenever, you start getting close to the truth, it's like, here comes the bullshit. And that really makes me think that maybe the origin of a lot of the, the craziest theories do come from the conspirators themselves or from the government, the government agencies, because, to me, it's quite obvious that, this could be a CIA op, fam, but how many 9/11 truthers concentrate upon that?
I don't not believe that. So
Did I know I mentioned it on the break. Did I mention COINTELPRO?
You did.
Okay, well, COINTELPRO. I mean, if you are not familiar with that, it was it was either FBI or I think it was FBI because it was domestic. It was an FBI program to infiltrate radical organizations and practice essentially accelerationism within these organizations, make them do crazy shit to discredit them.
yeah.
And this was 50 years ago. So, and this happened. This is a fact. This was a real thing. So there's absolutely no reason to believe that the government would not be involved in that sort of behavior on 9/11 or today.
Here's another example. Cheney was involved and were involved in the transition of government planning, back under Reagan. And they actually got to implement some of it with 9/11. So, I would want to concentrate on that. What does that entail? What special things came into, effect, on 9/11? Did Cheney have extraordinary power, seeing how he was the author of those things? Those are the sort of things I'm interested in, but it seems like not a lot of people are concentrating upon that. There's not a lot of information. It's like you really have to search.
Isn't that I'm being pedantic. It's called the continuation of government.
Yeah, the continuation of government.
The COG, yeah. And one thing
shadow government is what the press called it for a year. Yeah.
Well, and that's funny because now we have this whole concept of the deep state and stuff, but the COG, but you bring up an interesting point. They were involved. Cheney and Rumsfeld were Reagan administration. I believe at least Cheney and possibly Rumsfeld go back to the Nixon administration.
Yes.
Actually, they do. They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys were in. But you want to talk about deep state? You want to talk about guys that have been in the fucking government for a long time?
Yeah.
They go. I mean, there's that picture of Rumsfeld and like Cheney shaking hands and laughing with Saddam.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they're planning, to destroy Saddam. It's ironic.
Yeah, no, it's true though. It's true. The deep state is deeper than we even know, and it goes back to seeing Bill Clinton with George H.W. Bush back in the late 70s, early 80s, or whatever. These guys all know each other. It's a WWE sort of coalition, WWF, whatever.
I remember it was a meme from the post 9/11 era that like Dick Cheney broadcasting from an undisclosed location.
Yeah,
you guys remember that?
Yeah, I remember that meme. No, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. Yeah.
You could not look at the Naval Observatory in Maryland, I believe it is, with Google Maps. It was blurred out because that's where Cheney lived.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I just want to throw this out here. Dick Cheney does not have a pulse. He literally does not have a pulse. He has been implanted.
We've already at one point we thought that Zbigniew Brzezinski was a vampire, but maybe now it's
this is true. This is true. Dick Cheney is one of a very few human beings who has been implanted with a dual rotary screw type pump for a heart. His physical heart has been removed from his body.
He has no pulse. He literally has no pulse.
This is a fact. He has a constant blood pressure.
And look this up.
It's a fact.
Oh my God. Okay.
And he has a cavitating screw type pump. It's a dual. I think it's dual chamber, one up, one down, or something that moves blood in and out through his lungs. And he has a battery pack, plugged in through ports on his side. He wears on his belt.
Lord Jesus Christ, help us all as Americans.
This is the next stage. It's actually the next stage in human organ replacement because it's more effective and longer lasting. The original mechanical heart has valves that go in and out It's kind of like why a piston engine had to be rebuilt way quicker than a jet engine because there's a difference between a rotary and a reciprocating. But yeah, Dick Cheney has no pulse.
All right then. Well, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Thank you very much. We're gonna end on that. So
if you can hear that and not think that pure fucking evil exists, like
thanks for joining us, Salty. Appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure, as always. Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
us.
man. I love this kind of stuff. I don't take it too seriously. And for all the McNabs out there, I don't think any of us make it a huge part of our day-to-day life or anything. But I'm glad that the timing worked out and I managed to be here for this episode.
I actually hadn't done hardly any 9/11 research up until this episode.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about it in probably a decade. Until
I'm glad we could bring it up for you guys.
Until TDS, brought it up, and honestly, McNabb wanted to make it such a contentious issue and accuse all of us here tonight of making it a huge part of our lives, which it's not true.
It's not true. I've been on. It's not a huge part of my life.
Like Johnny and I both have more kids than McNabb. So I mean,
yeah, exactly.
If you want to talk about actually who's doing
me,
the 14 words,
exactly. Me, you, and Scott all have more kids. Than McNabb. So good luck with that, McNabb.
He can paint Warhammer and tell us we're wasting our time investigating.
That's right. Let's not. Hey, Scott's hang on. All right. Does any of you guys
board with red strings everywhere? Pictures of 9/11.
Stop.
Was it Pepe Salvatore?
Yeah,
that's right.
Sylvia.
Right. All right, guys, stop. All right, so Musonius, thanks for joining us for episode 1 of season 3. You're going to be coming back for some more of the conspiratorial stuff. You got anything in closing with the intro to 9/11 with the Paranormies?
You talking to me?
Oh yeah, you're the only Musonius on the call, brother.
Well, I did hear it cut out. Good Lord. Yeah. Right. Well, thanks for having me on, and I'd be glad to come back for when we talk about the towers and airplanes and stuff.
Yeah,
that would be great.
We can't do this in one episode. It's just too much. It's too much.
Salty, it's the biggest event in our lifetime.
It really is. It is the Kennedy assassination of our generation. We're gonna do this.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this more than once. So, Salty, thanks for coming on, bro. Appreciate it. I'm glad the timing worked out well. That you're not out at sea with the knot in the bunk. You're here.
I've been, what? Just for the record, I'm on that no fap. So I just look. I don't touch.
Okay. Fair enough. Scott, Death, Adam, thanks for joining us again for a new season. It's going to be good this year. You guys know some of the guests we got coming on. It's going to be fun. You guys got anything to add tonight?
I think we're good.
All right.
Jews did 9/11.
That's right.
Yeah,
and
obviously.
again, whether or not you believe Jews did 9/11, if you believe that the family, the Saud family, is Jews, then Jews did 9/11. There you go. No matter what.
Yeah,
Jews did
either way.
9/11. Yeah, either way.
Kosher
All right.
sandwich.
That's right. The best kosher sandwich, because this one's, I don't know. I was going to say something about like the fucking brisket and whatever. All right. For the right stuff.biz, I am Johnny Monoxide. This has been the Paranormies presents the Ahnenerbe Hour with Scott Taylor, Adam Haidt, Death, with Musonius, Rufus, and Mr. Salty Seaman. We will talk to you later. We'll take you out with a creepypasta. See ya.
Scared in
Time
hell.
makes you gay.
Scared in hell.
Gayer than hell.
When my sister Betsy and I were kids, our family lived for a while in a charming old farmhouse. We loved exploring its dusty corners and climbing the apple tree in the backyard, but our favorite thing was the ghost. We called her Mother because she seemed so kind and nurturing. Some mornings, Betsy and I would wake up, and on each of our nightstands we'd find a cup that hadn't been there the night before. Mother had left them there, worried that we'd get thirsty during the night. She just wanted to take care of us. Among the house's original furnishings was an antique wooden chair, which we kept against the back wall of the living room. Whenever we were preoccupied, watching TV or playing a game, Mother would inch that chair forward across the room towards us. Sometimes she'd manage to move it all the way to the center of the room. We always felt sad putting it back against the wall. Mother just wanted to be near us. Years later, long after we'd moved out, I found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse's original occupants. A widow. She murdered her 2 children by giving them each a cup of poisoned milk before bed, and then she hung herself. The article included a photo of the farmhouse's living room, with a woman's body hanging from a beam. Beneath her, knocked over, was that old wooden chair, placed exactly in the center of the room.